Okay, Bill, you're on.
Hi, everybody. It's Bill Moore. The show As You Decide. Glad you could tune in. We have an exciting show today, but as usual, we open up our show talking about being confused, dazed, and amazed, which is politics at its best. So without further ado, Mr. Neil Diamond, and I'm amazed.
Someone thinking of the river Jordan. But on the way, you know I will abide. Okay, Bill.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Bill Moore. The show As You Decide in WRCS 970 AM in Ahoskie, North Carolina. We have an exciting show to you today. A couple of things to discuss. I'm waiting for a guest to call in, Miss Mary Felton, Mary Lyons Felton, as some people know her. Worked with her for a while in Chowan County. Superior administrator, dedicated to working with kids and improving kids' lives. Had a tough life herself, fought her way up, has raised a family quite successfully, and still fights for education and as a primary means to break the cycle of poverty. So as we wait for Ms. Lyons to call in, or Ms. Felton, excuse me, we'll talk about a couple other things. First of all, congratulations to everyone today. As I drove into Ahoskie, I noticed gas was down to $1.99.9. That's a pretty good price. Never thought we'd see that again. So I think we all congratulate with that. That puts some money back in our pockets, which is a good thing. Some of the things going on nationwide. Not sure how you feel about what's going on in Kentucky, where a court clerk has been jailed for her refusal to issue gay marriage licenses based on her religious beliefs. She is a born-again Christian. And so hold on a second. We'll see if it's the right person coming in. Maybe not, and I guess not. Anyway, she's a born-again Christian. And that born-again Christian has taken a stand that's got her in jail. She refuses to issue those licenses. Anyway, I understand there's a big rally today in Kentucky where the people are in support of her. There are also other people who, quite rightly so, are saying, you really can't do something like that because you're a public official and you have to follow the laws whether you agree with them or not. So there's an argument for both sides of that case. You decide who's right, and you move on from there. All right, right now, Miss Lyons is calling in. Miss Felton is called in. So, okay. Hold on a second. Hang on, we're having a little technical difficulty here to get Mary on the phone. All right, while we're waiting for Mary to get through with my tech to figure out how to get in touch with me again, some other things that are interesting that's going on. I just spent some time, a couple of weeks ago, I went to Columbus, Ohio for a convention that was run by Americans for Prosperity. And that convention included a discussion on where the country is going, what we're doing, and we'll pick it up from there. So what we did, we heard from some of the presidential candidates, and I have to tell you, some of them were surprisingly good, some of them were surprisingly bad, and a lot yet didn't even show. So had a good time, though, learned quite a bit. The groups, hold on a second. Bill Moore, you decide.
Yes, this is Mary Felton calling in.
Hi, Mary. How you talking? This is Bill Moore. You're on the air.
I'm doing well. It's great to speak with you.
Yeah, again, I was just telling the people a few minutes ago that we have a history together. We've worked together, and I know your commitment to working for education and breaking the cycle of poverty. And based on your deep religious views, that you make a heck of a guest and a dedicated advocate for that area. So I want to thank you for giving some time and coming on the show with me.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure, and you're welcome here anytime, because I know the quality of what you speak and the truth of what you speak, and how you believe in everything you say, which today is a unique experience for many people. But anyway, let's move in a little bit. I know the topic we're going to discuss today was education and the cycle of poverty. You want to say something to open up the conversation? We'll go from there.
Yes. Well, just wanting to make mention a little of my background. I was, in fact, raised in poverty, so I do understand the impact of poverty and how the cycle can continue without equality education and also employment opportunities beyond equality education. Being raised in poverty, experiencing lack of food, lack of other necessities, it's very hard on children. I know for me, attending school and being hungry, it interfered with my concentration on what the teacher was saying. And so I think it's so important for the listeners to understand that there are many factors involved in struggling children, not being successful. I think it's also very important to understand that lack of resources as well as lack of support impacts children not being successful. So education is definitely a vehicle to move a child that's in poverty to the middle class if those opportunities are available. But in order to assist children in poverty, there are many factors that need to be addressed. There are many programs that need to be talked about, and we need to have an honest conversation. For example, vocabulary. I will mention that one because that was an area in which I struggled as an elementary student. It was very difficult for me to absorb the information that I was expected to read and comprehend. My grandmother who raised me, she could not read or write. She was unable to help me with my homework. The vocabulary in which I read in books was totally different from the vocabulary that I heard in my environment. So therefore, I was at a disadvantage. And we all know, those of us who have achieved and those of us who are educators, we know that academic vocabulary is one of the strongest indicators on how well students will learn subject area content, and research supports that statement. So it is truly unfair to the students as well as the teachers to expect students who do not have the adequate vocabulary base to excel and to meet the mandates that are required. And so with that being said, just a little bit of my thought process at the time, I would allow anyone to, elaborate or ask questions.
Mary, beyond that, and we've talked about this before, but that's one of the reasons that if years ago they went after the SAT exams, because the vocabulary really wasn't the kind of words that kids for example, in the poverty or even inner city kids were understanding. The one that I remember distinctly that we're talking about is the vocabulary word spectacles. How many people knew that was glasses? Depending on the environment you grew up in, you had no concept what that word came from. And
exactly.
And I think that illustrates your point very, very well. Now, you were talking about some of the, I understand the issues with vocabulary and the problems it causes teachers. And I do know, and I would tell their listeners that when we're working with Mary, one of Mary's goals was to make the life or make teachers as effective as they possibly could be. And she was constantly looking for new methods or new ways that she could share with the staff on how to improve their techniques, because she knew that if she could improve their techniques, it would improve the kids' overall reaction and their scores. So, Mary, I do give you credit for that, because I know you brought it up, and I know you have some solutions already, or some recommended solutions.
Yes. And more importantly, one of the main, I think, strategies is to build a connection with the children, and research supports that as well, because it is known widely that children don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Once you build that connection with that student.
Mary, let me say that again for people, because that's very important what you say. Kids don't really know or care what you know until you prove to them that you care. And that is critical. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, it is so critical. It gives me a memory of a situation when I was in the first grade. I recall being hungry one day in school, and I recall my teacher, her name was Miss Johnson. I believe I was in the first grade, but I never forgot Miss Johnson. And I put my head down because my stomach was hurting. I had not had breakfast, and my stomach was hurting, and I was disengaged in the lesson for that morning. And so Miss Johnson came up and she asked me what was wrong. And I said, Miss Johnson, my stomach is hurting. And what always stayed with me was that Miss Johnson cared enough to ask me what was wrong with my stomach, or why did I think my stomach was hurting. And I told Miss Johnson that I was hungry. And Miss Johnson took me to the cafeteria, and she asked the ladies in the cafeteria to give me milk and cookies. Well, I never forgot that. It just made me understand that people do care. And I know that there's so much rhetoric going on, and sometimes, teachers, they don't get the credit for what they are doing. But there are many, many teachers out there. They are committed, they are passionate, they are caring, and they are dedicated to children. And I just want to make sure I mention that. There are many teachers out there who take the time, who spend their money on school supplies and other things to make sure those children's needs are met. And so I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that on air.
And I agree completely with that. We've worked with a number of teachers who've gone well above and beyond what they're required to do, because they really wanted to make sure their kids were successful. And in many, many cases, kids that were not doing as well as they should showed marked improvement, because teachers those people we're thinking about, did care and did put the time in. And I think that is critical as we continue this discussion.
I agree.
Okay, now, when we start talking about so the audience understands the basis of what we're talking about, there used to be a guy named Maslow many, many moons ago who did a theory on hierarchy of needs, and basically explains at what, you figure out what level a person, student or adult, is at, and you need to solve that basic need at that level before you get to go to the next level. And education is a higher level need, but that first basic level is basically food, clothing, and shelter and safety.
Yeah.
And if you do not meet those needs of the kids, in this case, we're talking about students, if you don't meet the needs of those kids, they're not going to be able to move on to the next level, which is education and beyond that, and going on from there. So when she talks about finding ways to make sure kids who are hungry get fed, kids that feel threatened are in a secure, safe environment, people that might need a coat because it's cold outside and they don't have the money to do that. And teachers very often can find a way to get there or get to an administrator, and they can find somebody. Something even simpler that I know Mary worked on together, there were kids who couldn't afford glasses. And she would work to see, would do her level best to see if she could find some funding around to buy those kids glasses so they could function in the classroom. But that's the first level. If you don't meet those basic needs, the kids aren't going to move up that hierarchy and get the education and move on and break that cycle. Sorry for pontificating, Mary.
No, you did a great job explaining that. And because I experienced much of what you're talking about, I think I can elaborate on that further. If a child is cold, that child is not focusing in class on the subject matter. That child is probably focusing on when they go back outside on their way home that they're going to be cold. So there are many factors, as I said, there are external factors that can interfere with children being successful in school, that I think sometimes that discussion is really not being highlighted. And so when we go to talking about what children need, those basic needs need to come into the conversation.
Absolutely agree. Because until you meet those needs, you can expect no improvement on that education ladder. You're not going to break that cycle of poverty that we all talk and are concerned about.
And when you continue a cycle of poverty, I do want to mention hope. When children don't see anyone in their families living the extravagant life or basic needs being met, many times hopelessness it enters the equation, and they don't see education as a vehicle to transport them to a better life. If you don't value education, then you're not going to put forth your best effort. Now, how would one value education? I would say that they would have to see the benefits of education. And if everyone in your family, because they have struggled, and some people drop out of school because of, economic reasons and having to work to keep the electric bill, pay the rent, and, those types of things, which we're talking about basic needs. But if a child comes up and is raised in that type of environment, that child focus many times is, well, education didn't work for them. How will it work for me? So as I said, I think people like myself and other people who have overcome poverty, who have worked their way through and have allowed education to give them an opportunity to live a better life, I think we need to share our stories to motivate, to encourage, and to inspire, and to just make the world know it is possible. How do I know? Because I did it. I utilized education as a vehicle to move beyond poverty.
And I agree with you 100% on that, especially, I know, for example, I'll go to my lifetime. I was the first person in my family to finish high school, forget college. So it was a big thing for everybody. And, my father had done the 8th or 9th grade. My mom had done some high school. And so they knew they wanted me to go on and do better than they had. And they always encouraged me. And I find that something that in many cases doesn't exist today. I mean, I knew that I was going to college, whichever way is going to happen, I was going to get there one way or another. Too often today, we don't hear that from families. When I talk to parents and we talk to kids, the encouragement that you can do it, you can make it, you will make it, we want you to make it. And how does a parent show that? Well, first of all, making school important. Meet those needs as best you possibly can, but make sure the kids are doing the work. Check the work at night if you possibly can. If you can't, find a way to call home if you happen to be working 2 jobs, and that happens many times, and spend a minute or 2 talking to somebody, but make sure that's important. Make sure the parent stays in touch with school as best they can. And, the schools need to understand on the other side of that all parents are not available from 9 to 3. You've got, we used to do that at homes. We'd have evening meetings so that we could open up to parents that we couldn't normally see during the day. So again, I don't mean to cut off from your time, Mary, but sometimes we get started, you know what I'm like.
And I think everything that you're saying is so important, because parents are very vital in this situation. They, many people say parents are a child's first teacher. And so I think if a parent is limited regarding having the knowledge to help the child with the homework, because we know that it's a lot different, especially now with the new Common Core. Many parents, I've had parents to come to me and ask, how am I supposed to help my child? We didn't learn the way that they're teaching now. Well, my answer would be, go and talk to the child's teacher. Communicate with the school counselor. So yes, we do know as educators that, there may be limitations on the parent, but there's also avenues available, and the parents need to take advantage of those avenues. Talk to the teachers, talk to the counselors, talk to anyone that you can to ensure that your child gets the assistance that they need.
And if you have a little time, talk to an administrator and get permission to audit a class to learn some of those things that you don't normally understand based on these new Common Core standards. And I agree with that 100%. But a parent, can do very simple things to show the importance of school. Like I said, keep in contact with everybody, but make sure there's a set time for homework. Make sure that homework's done. Where possible, check it. Where it's impossible, follow through with call the school. The school can arrange for you, for example, that once a week you might get a note from the teachers how your child is doing that week in school, as far as subject by subject or depending what level they're on. And follow through with it on the weekend. Talk to your kids a little bit about it, but show them that education is important and that you will not stand for less than their best.
And that is exactly right. I would also like to add, there are many online, free, appropriate educational resources.
I told you, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody knows about him, she does. Go ahead, Mary.
There are many available resources. And I would also suggest YouTube. If you type a concept in, there are many teachers as well as professors that record their lectures. And that information is there and it's free. So what I always encourage parents to do is to utilize those free resources that are available. Khan Academy is a great resource. It has subject matters. It's broken down with concepts. Khan Academy is free. And all it takes is connection to the internet. You have a computer and you have an internet connection 24/7. It is free. And what I really love about Khan Academy is that the children, they can work at their own pace. If they don't understand the concept, there's a video there they can record, they can rewind as many times as they would like and continue to review that information. And then they also offer practice activities. Now we know that repetition is needed. So they have that opportunity. So there are available resources there, and all they have to do is make sure that the children utilize the available resources. So I will say that I am just not one to say that there's not any assistance available, because there are many available resources and they are free. So we can no longer say that it's because of money or the lack of money, because those resources are available. And as parents, as well as educators, we have to encourage our children to utilize the available resources. There is this word responsibility.
And beyond that,
Mary, responsible as well. They must take some responsibility in the learning process. parent, the teacher, as well as the student. It's a combination. It's a team effort. But I do believe if each component will do what they can and supposed to do, I think our children can be successful. There is.
Mary, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I agree with you 100% of what you're saying about that. And I would also point out to parents, if you're not in an area that gets internet, unfortunately in rural areas, sometimes we have that. There is a library that's generally open, someplace that has free internet availability. If you can get the kids there for a little bit after school, talk to the teachers. They're very often after school, and we'll let the kids stay after school in their classrooms and use the internet for appropriate things. So those are out there. But one final thing in the short time we have left, and believe it or not, we're down to about 5 minutes.
Wow.
It's gone very quick, Mary. When you and I getting started on something, time does fly. Maybe you can come back again and we'll continue on a different topic. But I would like to, again, get your input on what I'm about to say. Parents, you have to give kids hope that they can break the cycle, they can move on, they can make a better life. Now, your first answer is going to be, where we're going to find the money, and that's normal. You need to understand that there's a lot of money out there that's available to kids now to go to advanced training for school. There's a Pell Grant that you can get, which pays almost $6,000 a year, which will cover the cost of a 2-year school or a 4-year school if you're lucky enough to get in there. There are scholarships out there for a myriad of things to get based on education, based on select talents, be it musical, be it sports, whatever else. They're all out there. But I'm going to stop talking, Mary, and let you comment on what I just said.
I think that is so important. I would like to say that I was the first of over 30 grandchildren who completed college. When I first attended college, I did take advantage of the financial aid, the resources that you're talking about, and I graduated from Elizabeth City State University. Later, I utilized a loan, and I did receive my master's in secondary education from Old Dominion University, and beyond that, an advanced graduate certificate in school administration. I would like to say that currently I am pursuing a PhD in education leadership. So that is evidence that a child born and raised in poverty can excel. And I just hope that my story can inspire others to know that it can be done. How do I know? Because I've done it and I'm continuing to do it.
And I would tell you, for everybody who doesn't know Mary, and you don't, and I do, everything she's saying is gospel. She believes what she's saying, and she has the track record to prove it. So, I congratulate her on that. And one quick thing again, people, when I talk about a grant, that's not money you have to pay back. I would give you one further hint on some of the information that's going out for college loans, and they're different because you have to pay them back. Keep an eye on where the kids are going to school and what they want to do. You don't want the kids to sign for $300,000 worth of loans if the job they're looking for is only going to pay $30,000 to $40,000. They're never going to get out of debt. So they need to find a school, and there are good schools out there at all price ranges that will meet the requirements that you need to graduate and be able to pay back the loan if that's the direction you take. Mary, again, we're running out of time. It's almost 1 o'clock, and I've got to move on to the next portion of the show. But I thank you so much for coming on and talking to us a little bit about being it, and more important, about being a model to show people that yes, it's possible, yes, it can be done, and I know you live what you say. So thank you for being on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much, and it has been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Mary. I'll talk to you again soon. And for those of you watching, if you want to hear this show again, and Mary, if you look sometime tonight on You Decide on the internet at YouTube, this show's actually going out live stream as we talk. So you can look at my face and hear your voice. I'm not sure that's a good thing or bad, but
okay, awesome. And I'm sure you did tell them that I served at school administration with you and served as your assistant principal.
I mentioned all that, and I also mentioned how good you were and how dedicated you were.
Yes, we both are.
Well, thank you, but you're one of the people that made me look good. And with that, I'm going to say good night and talk to you again. Thank you, Mary.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye now. All right, everybody, that was Mary Lyons Felton, someone who's lived the issue of poverty and broke that cycle, and her family has broken that cycle, and she's dedicated to helping as many people as possible. you ever want to talk to Mary, you get in touch with me. I can get you hooked up to talk to her, and that'd be great. We've about reached that point now where we're going to get ready for our next segment, which is Dr. Stein coming on, and she wants to talk to us how to raise kids that respect women, a topic that I think is sorely needed. So anyway, our usual intro to Dr. Stein, which is thank God for kids.
Hello, Bill.
Hi, Ro, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Yourself?
Good. Are you getting mileage for all this work? Because you should be a rich lady if you do.
Oh, yes. If I did get mileage, I would be a rich lady.
Okay. I want to tell you, you were in my old stomping grounds last week. I was jealous. Had I known it, I'd come up just to hear you speak.
Oh, well, maybe I should. Well, we're going to have it posted on Facebook so that you know where we are.
Okay, so just, and because, Alpam was an organization I was actively involved in until we moved to down in KB. But anyway, I'm going to, we're about ready to get started with the show, and had a great guest on before you of Mary Lyons Felton, who was an educator with me and who's dedicated to breaking the cycle of poverty. And she does a great job fighting for kids and educating parents. So she was great, and you're leading in today's an education show. And now we're going to teach people how to be nice and respect your wives and sisters and moms and everything else.
That's right. If we don't have respectful boys and girls, then we're not going to have a citizen race that can achieve everything that we want for them as parents and teachers.
Oh, I agree completely. And my wife will tell you that if I don't agree, she'll smack me in the head to get me in the line.
That's right. That's a good wife.
That's a good wife. Yes, it is. Okay, I think we're about ready to click on. Count three.
You're on.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Bill Moore, WRCS, and the show is You Decide, and we're on WRCS 970 AM. So we're getting our usual segment with Dr. Rosemary Fernandez-Stein, who comes on with us, and we talk parenting. And we have an interesting topic today, especially in the modern world, and it's called teaching our kids how to respect women, because all too often it's not happening. And I think it's appropriate for our culture we talk. Welcome back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Bill. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And I just wanted to say hi to the audience and hope that they had a great Labor Day. And so when you sent me an email reminding me about the radio show, I started giving a lot of thought to what is important as we bring our children up. And a lot of what I talk about is education, but there's a kind of education that we've talked about before, which is, I believe, the most important part in education, which is the home education. What do we teach them? What is that basis, the foundation for everything that they believe and that they will hold dear as they grow up? And I started thinking about the mom's role, and specifically the mom first, but of course the dad, in teaching our men of the future to honor and respect women. And the reason I was thinking about that is because I had an experience over the weekend with a good friend who we spent the weekend with, and it was very clear after a little while that the little boy did not respect his mom. And he gets right into her space, and so she'll be talking, and he gets right in front of her. And he doesn't mean any harm. He's just just doing what he's sort of taught, and he hasn't been messaged any differently. But he gets right into her face, and if she's talking to somebody else, he will turn her face to him so that she listens and pays attention only to him. If he's talking, she has to stop talking and pay attention to him. If he asks her for something, then she has to stand up and go get it for him. And so they have this sort of back and forth relationship. And as I see how he treats his mom, it's very clear to me that he doesn't have respect. And he may have his version of affection, but he doesn't have respect for his mom. And the one thing that we've talked about before, and this is very, very important, that a child will not have any more respect for somebody else than what they have for their mom and dad, but specifically for their mom. So that if especially a boy, respects and honors and obeys his mom, that will overflow to the rest of his relationships, especially for women. But if, like my little friend, he doesn't have respect, doesn't have honor and obedience for his mom, then you will see that as it trickle over to the rest of his relationships, but then really not just trickle, but sort of overflow over to the rest of his relationships soon after. Just
as a quick question, he doesn't do that with his father, though, huh?
It doesn't seem like it. Now, we have so many relationships with moms and dads that are divorced, but even when that does happen and dad takes the role of sort of a friend, they understand that there are some subtle signs about what not to go over, and the boys won't, because they will get very quickly put into their place. And so from what I understand, and I have not seen this little guy interact with his dad, but what I understand is that he understands when his dad gets stern with him, he backs off and will not treat dad the same way that he treats mom.
That's interesting. So, but I'm going to use a term that we've talked about before, and that's enabler.
And that's so sad, because we, as women, we're not looking to be enablers of our children. Many times we fall into that pitfall, but we're not looking for that. We're looking to not hurt our children many times, and we've fallen also into the trap of thinking that if we reprimand them, if we tell them that that's not good behavior, that their self-esteem will be damaged. And so it sort of, it makes the so-called monster grow. And, at some point, this little guy is going to indeed become a monster. And we're feeding him and growing him right in front of us.
Well, two questions. First of all, how does a mother in this case avoid something like that? And part two is, if they're already in that situation, how do they get out of it?
Very good. So from the time a little boy is about a year old, let's say between 12 and 18 months, he knows he's got a very special relationship with that mom, because most of the time that mom is the one who cares for him, the most. She's breastfeeding him, she's changing his diaper, she's the one who's involved in the day-to-day activities and care, more than most other people. Even if he attends daycare, there's a genuineness and affection and a touch that comes from mom that won't generally be there from anybody else. So he understands that they understand that there's a relationship that's different. But even as little babies, I've seen that little boys, particularly little girls as well, but more little boys, will tend to be aggressive in that affection sometimes. And because that mom has a special love for their child, he will sort of push on that love and will try to push mommy to do something, or say no, mommy, or sort of hold her head, and even try to slap her if and it might even be done in a so-called loving manner. And it's very important to send that tone back to the child right away. That is not acceptable. You make a very, very stern face if you have to take the child's hand and lightly snap it and say no. And if you see that returning, then you need the help of your husband. And if you don't have a husband, you go to your dad and you back the same message up. And you say, and dad supports mom or granddad does and says, no, you will treat your mom with respect. Between those two things, and mom is continually messaging, no, you treat your mom with respect. And the men in the family also messaging that to the child, but also treating that woman, the mom, with respect as well, because you can't expect for the little guy to take that message when dad or granddad is not treating mom with respect as well. So those two things, from the time that a child is knee high, is what I've seen, builds a man who understands, well, a young man first, of course, who understands that a woman is a person to be valued and to be respected, because obviously we're not as strong as men are, and men could quickly really do a lot of harm to a woman if a man does not respect her.
Again, you're pointing out the importance of modeling as a parent.
Absolutely. So without the modeling, the whole message is not going to be well taken. I mean, you'll get your point across, but it's not going to have the same effect unless somebody else intervenes. Yeah,
but what you're also saying is, if you're not modeling it correctly, the point you get over may not be the intended one.
That's right. If they will probably need to be reinforced by some other person in some other way. If the dad is not modeling the behaviors to the child.
All right, so that's how you stop it from ever starting. But so let's talk about what you had this weekend. Obviously, they were deep into this unhealthy relationship, for want of a better term. How do you turn it around?
And that's what's sad, that it's going to take a little while to turn around. And the person that it's the hardest on, amazingly, is not the child. It's the mother. The child will have a moment of rebellion. And when I say a moment, I don't mean like 5 minutes. I mean, this will take a few weeks for the child to settle back into his spot. And, there'll be a minimum discomfort, but the greatest discomfort comes from the side of the mom. Many times when a mom is in a relationship like this, and, it's just sort of a dysfunctional sort of cycle that she's in, there's a relationship and a closeness, an innocence, that the mom doesn't want to lose. And when she puts that barrier and she says, look, you're in my space, you don't touch me that way, you don't speak to me that way, she's signaling we are not friends. And that's a scary place for many moms, especially single moms, to be. But what a mom really has to keep in mind, before she starts on this journey, what she really has to focus on is that it's not for her good. Yes, it is for her good, but that's a secondary gain. It's for the good of the child. It's for saving the child's life, because otherwise this little guy's going to grow up to be a wife beater and an abuser and be in abusive relationships. And we all know that that's not a full life that a man like that would have.
And that attitude is also going to spread into school.
That's right. And remember, we're safeguarding the women around this young man as well. More than 50% of our teachers are women. Each one of these boys that's been allowed to grow up this way will come in contact with a woman that will need him to behave in a certain way. She's going to have certain expectations of him, but he's not going to be able to take well to that. And at some point, that lack of respect that he has for women is going to be overwhelming, and then he's going to push back. We have a young man at the clinic that is the full-grown version of the little guy that we saw, and he has no respect for women. Will mistreat them. Will say that he doesn't want to be spoken to by them. He pushes his mom around and has been known to hurt her. And this is just a 16-year-old young man, and I'm sure at school the teachers just back off, and this boy can be unteachable because he has no respect for women. So as women, we're safeguarding society around us by making sure that we grow up boys that are respectful and obey females.
Well, you know, and you're taking it to the next step beyond that. When they start dating, if they don't realize when a woman says no, it opens up another can of worms they're not going to be happy with.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and there are so many cases of that, of these dysfunctional relationships, and the guy really actually thinks that he's doing the right thing because that's how he's been taught, you know, passively. Not that the mom is going around trying to raise up a you know, somebody who's abusive, but he genuinely thinks that this is the way that women react. You have to tell them 6 or 7 times that you have to push them away when you don't want their advances, and that can get a young man into a lot of trouble. And I want people to see it not from the side of these boys are bad, but from the side of that, you know, this is the environment that they've been growing up with. This is what they've been passively taught. And no mom wants that outcome for her son. And so that's when we grab, you know, the child's future and we say, you know what, no more. It's going to hurt me right now. I might lose my relationship with my son. And if you know, my relationship of that affection and tenderness. And if it has to be that way, then so be it, because I'm saving my boy's life.
Yeah, and you're going to help be successful both in school and when they go out to work someplace and in any future relationships that they have.
That's right. And and I can't stress this enough, but it is not an easy decision to come upon, and it's not easy to start that, but it's so very necessary. Moms, we have to have a very good relationship with our son, where we have him understand that women are to be respected, and that mom needs to message an inner strength. We're not necessarily strong in our muscles, but we need to message inner strength. And that was one of the problems that my girlfriend has, is that she messages weakness. She's a very, very young lady. She's been through a lot, and she's very much studied, and anybody on earth would have a lot of respect for this woman. But because she messages to her son that she's weak and she doesn't know how to make a decision, he truly believes that in all his heart, that she doesn't know how to make a decision. So he's rather derisive of her and just laughs whenever she says something. And that sort of feeds into the thought that she is not capable of being a strong woman.
Again, just for the viewer out there that sees themselves in this situation, what would be the first steps they should take to try to turn this around?
And the first step is to realize that you have a problem. That's the most important one of all.
That, in most cases, is the first step.
I'm sorry?
In most problems around the world, that's the first step.
That's right. You have to realize in all of your heart that you have a problem. There's a little voice inside of each one that's saying, this is not right. You have to acknowledge that voice. Don't let it go away, because most of us say, but so-and-so's son is worse. Forget about that. That's not your son. Your son is the one that's been given to you to raise the right way. If you have that little gnaw inside and it's telling you that something's not right, pay attention, stop. And so that's the first step, is acknowledging that. And then realizing, okay, I have to make a difference. I have to do something differently. And how do I start that? And the thing is to decide today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Once you know that you have a problem and you have to fix that problem, you decide to do it today. And then you sit down and you have a little bit of a family conference. Now, I would suggest that you go over to Dad, whether you're married or not to Dad, but if Dad is sort of in the picture, that you go over to Dad, and if there is no Dad in the picture, that you go to your support male, if that's your dad, or an uncle that looks over the family, and you let them know that you've acknowledged this, and they're going to probably be nodding their heads like, I told you so. Ignore that. Don't get yourself upset. It's okay. So that's the first thing, is to have this little conversation about, I realize that I have a problem. If I don't fix this problem, my son is going to have a boatload of trouble in front of him. And so it's time for me to start. So that would be the second step of what I would do. to go back to the child, and hopefully with your support system at hand, and say, we're going to do things differently because I realize that things are not going well here. And I need for you to have respect for me. Now, you don't need a complete buy-in from a child because he's a child. He's not going to say, yes, you're right, I'm going to grow up to be a wife abuser. He's not going to say that. But he needs sort of a kind of message a signal to say, from now on, things are going to be different. And so you sort of lay things simply down and you say, from now on, things are going to be different. I need for you to respect me. I need for you to listen and obey me. And that sets the signal. Don't think that that's going to make the whole difference. And then you lay down some simple groundwork and you say, when you speak to me in this way, when you do things in this way, and you push me around, or I feel uncomfortable, there will be consequences. And you leave, and the child is going to sort of probably be very startled, wonder what's going on, and at some point that child is going to push back to see if you really mean it. And you have to be ready.
And if you don't mean it, don't say it.
Whether that is to go to sleep early for a week, to have any distractions, TV, electronics taken away, grounding. It needs to be a very decisive consequence.
And I agree. And the critical element there is twofold. Don't say it if you don't mean it, and prepare. It's not going to be an overnight battle.
That's right. It wasn't overnight that you got here, so it's not going to be overnight that you're going to get out of it. It's probably going to take a few weeks, if not a couple of months, to break that cycle, because it is a very bad cycle, and you're probably feeding, if a woman is doing this, they're probably feeding into the psyche of that child, and he's going to be very dysfunctional.
Interesting. Just a little bit pushing it further down the road a piece. This is not found between, say, fathers and daughters, and I'm just asking the question.
It's different, and remember, daughters are less strong, and the fear is that boys, when they grow up, have a certain, muscular strength, a masculine strength that can be very harmful. There are relationships where it sort of goes backwards. It's much, much fewer, but I've seen it where dad is the spoiler, let's say, and the child picks up on the fact that dad spoils, mom is trying to lay down the law. So every time that mom tries to lay down the law, the child will come back and tattle, and then dad goes over and says to mom, "Don't be that rough on her. Why are you doing this?" And it's sort of an opposite effect in a way, but it comes back to then mom is belittled, so that at the end of the day, every time dad gets home, mom's position is belittled because she feels that she can get away with things because she's got dad's support.
And I would tell you that's a very, very difficult thing to do. I've been there, especially being an educator. And after I've seen some of the things that would go on in a school, and dealt with it as either a dean or an assistant principal as a teacher, and I'd come home and the wife would say to me, "He didn't do his homework or didn't complete his homework. I need you to deal with that right now." And you start weighing that on the scale you just left. And it's very difficult to, and you know what you have to do. And hopefully I supported my wife every time, but I suspect I didn't. Where I went in there and I did what she wanted me to do. Though I guess wholeheartedly I was saying to myself, if this is a problem, you ought to follow me down to school.
That's right. And so once again, it's a matter of supporting each other, but making sure that the dad messages back, no, this is not going to be tolerated. Even if it seems like it's a little severe sometimes, and that the wife might have sort of come down on the child a little bit harsher, but that's something to discuss behind closed doors. You make sure that you present to the child as much as you can a front that shows the child that you're together on.
See, I would, and the only thing I would add to that as a father of two and watching my 6 grandkids get up, the one thing I used to hate is the line that when I came in the door, they would do, I told them to wait till you got home.
That's not exactly the most fair thing, because you men, you do have your hands pretty full of work. You have other things that you're thinking about. You're hoping to find sort of the refuge of a home and peace when you get home, and then only to find that there are 3 or 4 little urchins lined up to tell you everything that they did wrong, and that Dad's got to deal with it right then and there.
Right, and they want to get their version in first.
That's right, and so that doesn't work. And so that's a good thing for moms to be thinking about, that there's an appropriate time, and when he's coming in the door, unless Johnny has done something horrendous and robbed the bank, that let's look for another moment.
Well, beyond that, I used to tell my wife, if it's not a major issue, then maybe you're demeaning yourself by saying I have to do it.
That's right. It is just, you're just helping each other, because it's probably not going to be constructive to deal with it right there. One more thing to add in about the dads and the moms. You know, it used to be when we grew up, whether it was better or worse, that dads wouldn't throw themselves on the ground to play with their children. And kids have to have an inordinate amount of respect for especially their dads, because the respect for the mom comes through the respect for and sort of a good fear of dad. And I think a lot of that broke down when Dad came home and throws himself on the ground like a big bear. You know, there's a place for having a good time with your kids, but always be cognizant of the fact that when you become your kid's pal, that respect will break down, and a kid really needs that firmness and strength that comes from Dad. And that's not to say break down that relationship and don't want to hug your child and for the child to really know that you're truly there for them. It's just to be cognizant of the fact that your child doesn't necessarily need that kind of friend. That your child may have other friends, but that kind of friend is not necessarily in the best interest of your child's well-being.
Okay. I think we've already reached that point. Hold on, I'm getting a message to keep talking because there's another technical issue, which gives us a little bit of time, which is good. Got a quick one for everybody. You know, Rosemary Fernandez Stein is running for state DPI head, superintendent of our schools in the state of North Carolina. If you like what she's saying and you think what she's saying is right, then you need to get out there and support her. And, you know, I'm not being paid to say this, but she's got my vote, and I'll do everything I can to get her elected because I think she'll be good for our districts and working with our kids and improving their educational stature straight across the board. So with that said, and Rosemary, I thank you as always, and we're gonna have another show next week because this show was off a week for some personal issues. So we'll be back again next week with some interesting conversation. I can't wait to find out what she's dug up for us. Though I have to admit to you that you burst one of my bubbles because I used to have a great time after supper taking the kids inside and wrestling on the floor like a big old bear.
Now that's funny.
And I remember now my kids will tell you that, and I look back fondly because I would also tell you that my daughter she was like 5 years younger than my son, and she would always want to get involved in the wrestling match, and there was always a concern about her getting hurt. And if you didn't let her in, then her feelings were hurt. And more than that, my wife was not a happy camper that I was excusing her from the thing. So I remember all those fond things that we used to do. So, but I have to tell you, I will have to defend to the right a man to wrestle with his son and his child, no matter what. If it's fun wrestling, I have to do.
That is good. You go for that, though. That's fine. I'll see you next week, and maybe I'll show up in a place near you.
Yep, and let me know. I'll be glad to come over and sit there and just smile.
That's great.
Thank you. Mess of the family.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached that point again where the show's closing. Need to tell you that it's been a great show. I think both Dr. Stein and Mary Lyons Felton coming on and talking to us did an awful lot to give us information. So this was not one of our political days, and that's okay, because this is probably more important, developing the next generation to run this country for years after it's done. As always, when we close out a show, as soon as we're ready, we'll put on Ray Charles singing America. And we'll be back next week, 2 in a row this month, with another show and new guests and new things to talk about. So without further ado, Mr. Ray Charles in America. Are we off? I guess we're still on again, so I guess we're back online and we're active again. I apologize. We're having a little technical difficulty in getting shut down and playing Ray Charles in America close down, but I want to thank you for listening. And if you do have suggestions for a possible topic for a show, either myself or Dr. Stein, if you get in touch with the station here, they'll get the message to me and I'll get it to Dr. Stein. If you want either Dr. Stein or I to come by and maybe speak at a local function and talk about a topic that we've had here, just again, get to the station. We'll be glad to set up a time and talk to you and see if we can come over and work with you. This is a very important day for us. Today was the beginning of the 3rd year I've been doing this show. So this was a very special show, and I think and a very important thing. And I think we do a service to the community. You always have to agree with me so long as you understand that we can disagree sometimes and we agree on other times, and that's important. So again, Mr. Ray Charles in America, and I'll see you next week.
Great.
We made it?
Yes.